He had survived bullets, explosions, and missions no one was supposed to come back from. But the night he heard a woman whisper, "I was a nurse once, before the world forgot me," was the night his armor finally cracked. What happened next would bind two broken lives together in a way neither of them expected, and the promise he made that night would change everything. The rain had been falling for hours, the kind that seeped into your bones and made the city feel colder than it really was. Lieutenant Ethan Cross, retired Navy SEAL, stood beneath the overpass gripping a thermos of coffee he hadn't planned on giving away. He told himself he was just passing through. That was always the lie he used. Passing through meant he didn't have to get involved. Then he heard coughing. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was weak, controlled, the kind of cough someone tries to hide because they don't want to be a burden. Ethan froze. Years of combat had trained his body to react before his mind could catch up. He turned toward the sound and saw her sitting on a flattened cardboard box, a thin blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. Her hair was damp, her face pale, but her eyes, those eyes, were sharp, intelligent, and painfully tired. He offered the coffee without a word. She hesitated, pride warring with survival, then accepted it with trembling hands. "Thank you," she said quietly. Her voice carried a calm professionalism that didn't belong on the streets. "You're sick," Ethan said. Not a question. She gave a faint smile. "Exposure. Pneumonia, maybe. I've diagnosed it enough times." That made him pause. "You're a doctor?" "Nurse," she corrected. "ICU. 10 years." She looked down at the cup. "Feels like another lifetime." Her name was Sarah Mitchell. She told him pieces, not the whole story. How her husband died overseas, how medical bills piled up, how one missed rent payment became 3, how pride kept her from asking for help until there was no one left to ask. Ethan didn't push. SEAL training had taught him when to speak and when to listen. He came back the next night. And the next. At first it was food. Then dry clothes. Then medicine he quietly bought from a pharmacy without asking if she could pay him back. Sarah tried to refuse every time, and every time he calmly ignored her protests. One night, as the city slept and the rain finally stopped, Sarah's breathing grew shallow. Ethan knelt beside her, fear tightening his chest in a way no battlefield ever had. He carried her to his truck without thinking. At the hospital, the doctor confirmed it, severe pneumonia. Another day out there, and she might not have survived. When she woke up, Ethan was sitting in the corner chair, arms crossed, eyes red from lack of sleep. She stared at him, confusion turning into realization. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered. "I know," he said. "But I did." She swallowed hard. "Why?" Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then spoke words that surprised even himself. "I need someone to stay," he said quietly. "And you need a home." That was the moment viewers would remember, the moment two shattered lives collided not out of pity, but necessity. Sarah moved into Ethan's spare room under strict conditions, temporary, independent, no charity. Ethan agreed, though he knew neither of them believed it. The house was clean but empty, like a place no one truly lived in. Ethan had designed it that way. Less attachment meant less pain. Recovery wasn't easy. Sarah struggled with guilt, with nightmares of patients she couldn't save, with the shame of how far she'd fallen. Ethan struggled too, panic attacks he never named, memories that woke him up drenched in sweat, silence that screamed louder than gunfire. They didn't heal each other overnight. They clashed. Sarah hated how controlled Ethan was, how he planned everything like a mission. Ethan hated how Sarah gave too much of herself away, even when she had nothing left. But slowly, something changed. Sarah started volunteering at a free clinic. At first, just paperwork. Then triage. Then, one day, a doctor handed her a pair of gloves and said, "We need you." She cried in the supply closet afterward, overwhelmed by the simple dignity of being needed again. Ethan watched from a distance, pride and fear mixing in his chest. He knew she wouldn't stay forever. And that terrified him. The real test came the night Ethan finally broke. A car backfired outside. He hit the floor instantly, breath ragged, hands shaking. Sarah found him like that, this unbreakable man reduced to a frightened soldier trapped in a memory. She didn't panic. She didn't ask questions. She grounded him, talked him through it the way she once had with patience clinging to life. When it was over, Ethan stared at the ceiling. "I couldn't save my team," he said. "I keep thinking if I'd done one thing differently." Sarah took his hand. "Survivor's guilt doesn't mean you failed," she said softly. "It means you cared." Weeks later, Sarah was offered a full-time nursing position. A real salary. A small apartment near the hospital. She came home holding the offer letter, heart pounding. I think I should go," she said, tears streaming. "I need to stand on my own again." Ethan nodded, even though it felt like losing a limb. "You should." On her last night, she packed quietly. When she reached the door, Ethan spoke. "I didn't just need someone to stay," he said. "I needed someone to remind me why I survived." Sarah turned, walked back, and hugged him tightly. "You gave me more than a home," she whispered. "You gave me my life back." She left, but she didn't disappear. Months later, Ethan stood outside a small community clinic bearing both their names. The Cross Mitchell Care Center. A place for veterans. For the homeless. For people the world forgot. Sarah stood beside him in scrubs. Ethan wore a simple jacket, no medals, no rank, just a man who finally found peace. They hadn't saved each other the way movies pretend. They did something harder. They stayed. Long enough to heal. Long enough to rebuild. Long enough to believe again. Final message, inspiring close. Sometimes salvation doesn't come as rescue, it comes as recognition. When two broken people choose to stay, even for a moment, they can build a home not made of walls, but of hope.